I forgot to add myself to the stream. Hello, hello, hello. Good evening. We're starting just a little bit early because I wanted to kind of get people here and stuff for when Gumshoe joins us. I have to get his actual name. I think he goes by that. But I am downstairs on the couch per usual, hoping that my children will allow me the time to do this without any fighting. Hey, Kellyanne. Hey, Shalma. Hey, Pointer Lover. I will say that if you do hear yelling, I know they're playing video games with their cousin over the thingy, so there might be some yelling or fighting or whatever. Um, oh, thanks, Remy. So we have Gumshoe Stories. That's what I want to pull up his website while I wait for him. This man has devoted probably, well, 6 years to this. Hey, Emily, this case. And Remy, I am hiding out my, hey, Caddy Girl, Texas, in my usual spot. Caddy Girl, when you want to come up after I get Gumshoe a couple, I'll drop the link if you want to come up. I'm just hiding out in my little spot here. Um, we are working on a different platform that streams better with my Wi-Fi. What I pay for my Wi-Fi, I should stream a lot better than I do. So that is coming. Thanks, voices. All right, awesome, Remy. So we know that anybody that joined us for the part one of this case, we explored, kind of Missy Bevers case and what happened there out of Texas. Caddy Texas Gale did go to actually where this all took place, not inside the church, but Missy's grave and whatnot, and was able to, get some really great video. I'm gonna wait till she's up at some point to share that. Who we have joining tonight is Gumshoe Stories, and his website is amazing. He has spent the last, I do pointer, the last 6 years devoted to helping solve this case. His research is phenomenal, and I had hoped it one day that I would, be lucky enough to get an interview with him. And then when I did my part one, he corrected me on a couple things, and which I always welcome because here's the deal: in a case like this, there's so many details that, I mean, I might get something wrong. I'm brilliant, I know, but I get things wrong. And so I just reached out to him and he said he'd be happy to. So he's super helpful as far as, you know, helping people bring awareness to this case. So I am like, so basically how I set it up was we can ask any questions. Thank you. Yeah, his research is phenomenal. He's the one that actually, for free, if you go on his website, what I'm about to show you has every link possible to the Missy Bevers case as far as, you know, documents, warrants, everything like that. I'm about to show you, and it's phenomenal. Let's see. Yeah, if you are in true crime and you can't be humble enough to have somebody, whoops, somebody help you. Whoops, sorry guys. That's really weird to hear yourself on echo. If you can't humble yourself enough to realize that you may not always be right, then there's issues. So this is his website. If you can see it, it's phenomenal. So he has a blog going that he keeps really up to date. He welcomes everybody, offers himself to help with background info, and it even says, and appear on your podcast as a guest. I am not paying him. He never asked for anything. But if you can see, he's got everything. I mean, we used all of his stuff, every warrant possible. So I highly recommend, if you want accurate info, links, sub to his, visit his website and whatnot. He I pointed to his direction by the Wolfie who shared this case with me, and I'm so glad I did. Do you know how much better it is to just like, oh, there's Tim now. Okay, we're good. It's Tim, not just Gumshoe, but I always call him that.
Can you hear me?
I can. Hey, Tim, thanks for joining me I'm on my couch now trying to avoid my children, so.
I'm trying to avoid my cat and dog. So.
I was just bragging on you a little bit.
Oh, well, I'm sorry I missed it.
You can watch the replay. I was showing everybody your website. And I was talking about how you had corrected me. Basically, I got onto this case by your website. One of a sub of mine and a moderator of a different channel said, "You've got to look at this case." And I was like, okay, because I lived in right near Dallas. And when I looked at it, I said, this happened a month before I moved there. I don't live there anymore, but I said, how did I miss this? Like, how did I miss this case? And then I got hooked. But whenever you're looking for stuff on the internet, you have to search all over for the links and stuff. And your website is, I mean, between you and Tom, I mean, your research is just phenomenal.
Yeah,
So.
I actually worked pretty closely with Tom. He reached out to me when he was working on his project like months ahead of time, and I knew from the beginning that it was going to be very in depth what he was doing. He put many, many, many hours into it. So
what I've learned about this case, and you helped me learn it, was that you cannot go into it without having help. You cannot go into it thinking that you're going to get everything right, because there's so many. So I was very appreciative that you helped me out there, because if you read, there's so many different theories and different articles. That's what I found in newspapers.
yeah, there really are. And a lot of people look at, some subset of the facts of the case, and then they develop their theory based on that. But then there are other things that they're not considering, and those things have to come into play too. And, as Jack Reacher always says, in an investigation, details matter. And so every detail in this case is extremely important to determining what the case is about.
Yeah, what made you, so if you don't mind, what made you kind of get into this case? What struck it? Was just the complexity of it, or?
Well, it was interesting. I happened to see on the news like the next day after the murder. It was either the Today Show or one of the morning shows. I happened to see them cover the case, and I live in Texas. I'm up in the Texas Panhandle, so I'm about 6 hours away from where it happened. But I was interested that it happened in Texas. I was interested that it happened in a church. I'm a person raised in the church, and so seeing someone commit a murder in a church is very, very shocking. So that grabbed me, and the fact that the person on video was in a police outfit was shocking as well. So those three things of it being in my state and being in a church and by someone dressed up as police just kind of hooked me. And I had never been really an online web sleuth before that. I would watch Dateline and things like that and be interested in a case while it's being presented on the screen. But as far as digging in and doing research into a case later, I had never done that before. And that started with Missy for me. And I just kind of went down the rabbit hole and never came back out.
Yeah, I mean, well, it is. I did see that you are no longer, you don't hang out on the web sleuth platform, and it's bizarre that anyone would be like, why are you correcting me, especially when it comes from somebody who has investigated, oh, Michelle, yeah, if you want accurate information and case information, here's your man, Gumshoe Stories. In fact, I'll drop the link again, and when my mods come in here, I will, you'll never find better coverage of the case right here. The one thing I wanted to clarify too, and help me understand this a little bit more, Tim, it wasn't uncommon where the cameras weren't set up. It wasn't that they were broken where I was trying to remember we were under the impression, that I was at least, that the camera was broken on a northeast, and that's not correct, right?
Well, here's what I know about the cameras, and here's what police said up front. They said the exterior cameras were not working, and they made it seem like that was multiple cameras outside the church were not working. But with contacts and sources that I've made over the past several years that I trust that are in a position to know, there may have only been one exterior camera that actually did not work. And it was a camera that was kind of facing the driveway as you drive in, kind of on the northwest side of the church, facing the highway. And they knew that camera did not work. every now and then it would glitch on them, and you'd actually have to climb a ladder and hit a reset button on the camera.
Okay.
And they, I guess, were shorthanded, and a couple of weeks had gone by with the knowledge that it wasn't working, but not getting anybody to go up there and reset it, which is, pretty sad, because that camera was in a pretty good position to catch a vehicle coming in and possibly get a license plate number.
And the
But
church had a break-in just a few years prior,
yeah, that
right?
church, well, that church had a trailer stolen, like,
Oh,
a
okay.
trailer that a truck would haul behind it or whatever.
Hmm.
It had not really had a break in into the building, but yeah, it did have a trailer stolen. And then not long after Missy's murder, within a year or two after that, there was like a golf cart battery charger that was stolen, and those things are expensive. They're like shockingly expensive.
Wow.
But again, that was on the outside of the church as well. And strangely, in this past spring of this year, when the flowers were blooming, there's blue bonnets that are kind
Hmm.
of in the field and everything next to the church or back behind the church, and people will pull into the church and they'll go take pictures of the blue bonnets.
Hmm.
And this one car with I think a man and two women had pulled in to do that, and they left some of their valuables in the car. And while they're feet away in the field taking pictures, somebody stole their wallet and purses right out of their car, right in a church parking lot. So, you know,
Wow.
that's a far cry from murder, but it just shows that, there are crimes of opportunity that happen, and people given an opportunity to do something they think they can get away with,
Hmm.
sometimes we'll do that, no matter whether it's at a church or not.
Okay. Yeah, so Remy, let me just briefly give you a quick overview, very brief. The Missy Bevers case was a mother of three. She was 45 and taught Camp Gladiator, which she was in phenomenal shape. She was coming in for a class around 4 a.m. Actually, it was like, yeah, around 4:30 or so, and was murdered by somebody dressed as well, I guess police or tactical gear. Hi, Dave. So it has been unsolved now for 6 years, and Tim has invested about 6 years into researching this case. Of course, as you would suspect, when something like this happens, people dive into their backgrounds, and because of that, hey, Jameson, I'm so glad you're here. Jameson loves this case. People take their own narratives of what happened, and articles are, yeah, we all just spin our own narratives and theories, but Tim definitely operates on facts, and I highly recommend his material and his website with his links on it. um, so I know, like, you were trying to explore the fact too that it is possible that it was a burglary. um, was there anything significant, like, I'm really curious about this question. Oh, and subs, you guys can, anybody watching, throw your questions in chat and I'll ask it. But what was the reason for breaking everything? Like, inside, he or her kept touching the wall going down. Like, do you have any theories on that? What, I mean, it just seemed like such odd behavior to just walk along the
Yeah, we see him one time touch the wall. And I mean, let me just explain with pronouns. I'm going to refer to the person as a he or him, but that
Yeah, but we
doesn't,
don't, yeah.
yeah, I don't know. But, it annoys me when people say he or she all the time.
It's too,
I
yeah,
don't want
no,
to do
you're
that.
good. We get what you're saying.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's a man or a woman,
Yep.
but he, we see him walk out of the kitchen into the interior of the church, and put her
Hmm.
right hand on the wall.
Okay.
Um, I'm not sure about this, but on that wall there are a couple of roll-up doors, or not doors, but roll-up windows, so
Oh.
that when the church is having a meal and they're giving plates out to people, they can roll those windows up, and it can be like a serving area when people are staying at the
Oh,
home.
okay. Hmm.
And so those roll-up windows are a different material, than the normal drywall. of the walls. And I just wonder if maybe he was just reaching out to see what that felt like, or see he noticed that there was a difference between that and the wall.
Wow.
You know, people will look at it and they'll wonder different things, that maybe he has a balancing problem, or maybe he's drunk or intoxicated in some way.
Mhm.
But those are leaps to make, you know, when you're only looking at 1 or 2 seconds of video. So they could be
Absolutely.
right, but we don't have a lot to base that on.
Yeah, and when I was watching Tom's 4-hour video, he had, and you have as well, gone to the forensic podiatrist, and so everything that they say could make, like, yes, that he could have a prosthetic, like, if, but then this would eliminate that, so all these things that they say that could cause his leg or to look like that, then there's always a reason why that's not possible, if that makes sense. So it
Right.
is, yeah, now that you say it is weird, because you see him touch the wall once, and then my brain automatically thinks, well, then he's just being creepy and he's doing that the whole time, when he in fact only touched it once. Our mind kind of like plays this big conspiracy. Jameson just said, I still think that person has some leg knee instability. And that's highly possible, yeah. I did read, what was interesting, I read in one of your blogs that there was only like a 6% of male population that would have the height between like 5'2" and 5'7". And then if you factor in the helmet, I mean, that would make them even shorter. So,
Yeah, it's definitely a short person. And
yeah.
you know, that's not to say that there aren't short males out there. There are.
Hmm.
But if you're just looking statistically at it, the chances are that it's male. But
Yeah.
and I mean, the chances are that it's well, based on height, chances are it's female.
Right.
But if you look at it in the sense of it was a person killing a woman,
Hmm.
statistically, women are killed much more often by men than they are by
Right.
women. So there are factors, you know, either way, you know, that can point
Right.
to it being either male or female.
Hmm. And now, when we hear Missy's sister-in-law, and I'm asking these questions if that's okay, because I know you have the actual facts. She does say that there was obviously footage we haven't seen, and they
Right.
have footage that they've seen Missy walking down, and that almost like she hears something and goes that way, or something along those lines. Um, that would actually lead me to believe that it could have been some sort of a, you know, burglary or something like that. Um, the one thing I didn't understand is, did the suspect have to go from one end quickly to the other end quickly, or was that the suspect just waiting there for her?
Well, we don't know exactly where the suspect was when
Hmm.
she walked in. Um, what I can say, and this is a little confusing because the video that the police released to us is not exactly in chronological sequence.
Except for
Um,
when you did it.
except for yeah, so you picked up on that. That's good.
Yep.
Yeah, if anybody wants to look on my website at the correct sequence,
Yep.
as I believe it to be, um, the point at in the official video where you see the suspect with the hammer, you know, hammering out the glass of a door, which is at
Hmm.
the very end of the video of the official. That's not when that actually happened.
Okay.
I don't believe.
Okay.
I think that the end of the video is really when the suspect is walking back toward the camera on the hallway that has that split door room, and
Okay.
then takes a right to go into the auditorium. So like catty corner across from the split door room, he turns
Okay.
to the right, and there's a little alcove there that leads to a door that leads into the auditorium, and that's where I think the video ends, because I think that that is the same camera angle as the
Hmm.
one where we saw earlier, where he was going and looking in the Dutch door room earlier.
That
Um,
makes so much more sense.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
think they edited it in camera order. So
Okay.
they're like pulling these clips off of the DVR at the church.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, this is camera 1, this is camera 2, this
Mhm.
is camera 3, this is camera 4.
Okay.
So when you see the end of the video that they released, that's up
Mhm.
in the northeast corner, very close to where he first emerged into the church,
Right, by
right?
the kitchen, yes.
Right. He came out and he goes counterclockwise around the church, and
Okay.
that then he completes that circuit. Because
Mhm.
if he just went around the corner instead of breaking into that room with that hammer, he'd be right back where he started.
Okay.
So,
Okay, yeah,
and
and
yeah,
guys, for anybody in my community post after this, I'm gonna post Tim's page and his website. He has literally just every link you could possibly ever dream of is set up. He has the only chronological um sequenced of the video on his website that I've seen right now. Everything you're seeing in the news and stuff, just like he said, is clipped in certain ways. It isn't the exact timing of it. So for me, so that we're going to get to the big question. There's discrepancies on whether she was shot or she was. From what I've read, it would seem that it was she. It was blunt force trauma or whatever they said to the head and chest. Um, have they ever officially said like based on her CSI? It would seem that that was the cause of death. Correct. That.
that's another murky area. Um, so the very first search warrant that was released in the case, which was like from the night after the murder,
Hmm.
said that she was deceased of a head wound, and that was all it said.
Right.
They then had the autopsy. They then came back with more warrants later in the week. This is still within a few days of the murder, saying that she died from puncture wounds to the head and chest. But there's data at a website called murderdata.org.
Okay.
People can go, and it's a huge database that police agencies submit their murder reports of murders that have happened in their jurisdictions every month to the government. It's a
Wow.
voluntary thing. Not every police agency
Right.
participates in them, but most do, I believe. And it's called Uniform Crime Reporting, or UCR.
Okay.
Lothian Police Department does participate in that, and when you go into that database and you filter and you sort of drill down by, okay, what county are we looking at? Ellis County.
Hmm.
What date are we looking at? April 18th, 2016. Uh,
Okay.
are we looking at a male or female? It's a female, age 45. You've got all these details that you can select and
Hmm.
filter, and it gives you one row as a result once you've been specific enough. It doesn't
Wow.
actually name victims,
Right.
uh, but it gives you Missy's murder data there, and it says that the cause of death was murder by handgun.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Wow.
this is and I'll just tell everybody again. I have sources, people that are in a position to know about this case,
Hmm.
who have confirmed that it was a murder by gun. And so, despite what you may
Wow.
hear or what people may tell you about the
Yep.
hammer, and I mean, there's been all kinds of rumors out there, but
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
and I'm not saying that the gun was the only weapon used, but it was the fatal
Right.
cause of her death was by a gun. And
Right.
that's
Yeah. I think some, like I said, we spin narratives, and then, like Tom said on his research, that we all want to think she was, beat multiple times and stuff. Well, there's just no evidence yet that would prove that she was, it was a brutal, horrible death. Yes, Remy, let me verify that, but yes, between 4:18 and 4:20 is when she arrived, correct?
she arrived at 4:16.
Okay.
She entered the church at 4:18.
Okay.
And this is an interesting tidbit not a lot of people know. I was a guest on a show that is on the Investigation Discovery Network, or ID. Um,
Wow.
the show was called Still a Mystery. This was back a few years ago. Um, and I think if anybody wanted to see it on demand, I think you can download the ID Go app. And
Mhm.
if you have a subscription on your TV or whatever to Investigation Discovery, you should be able to
Okay.
download it and watch it. But the show is Still a Mystery. It's season 2, episode 17.
Okay.
The episode is called Clues Caught on Camera.
Okay.
And but on this show, besides my ugly face being on there, Kevin Johnson, who is the former assistant police chief, who you have seen
Mhm.
in the press conferences
Yep.
early on, he's now retired from there and is not part of it anymore. But they brought him in because Brandon Bevers, the husband of the victim, trusts him and wanted him to be a part of that show, to
Mhm.
be interviewed. And so he says in his interview that Missy was down and he believes deceased by 4:20. Now, how would they know that? The way I think they know that, and this is just my speculation,
Mhm.
you can see in her pictures from the trip she took to Austin, that she wears a fitness tracker watch,
Mhm.
and it measures, heartbeat and stuff like that, um, or heart rate, I should say. And I believe that they probably were able to use that to pinpoint the moment that she was gone. And so,
I bet you're right.
uh, just my speculation, but it's, the thing is, that's 2 minutes. 4:18, she walks in. 4:20, she's down. So whatever happened
Mhm.
between her and the killer, it happened quickly.
Wow, I didn't that wasn't and she had yeah, I mean, she would have had everything set up to measure everything, so that would have been she would have definitely had the heart monitor thing and everything on there.
Hey, that's what
That
she did for a living. So yeah,
Yep.
I'm sure she was always tracking that stuff.
Remy wants to know, was there any trace back to the type of gun?
They do know what type of gun it is,
Mhm.
um, because they. I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah, for sure.
There are things that I know that it's probably in the best interest of
Yep.
the case for police to keep some things to themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh, but I will tell you that they have a very good idea of what type of gun it was.
Okay, good. And it was not her gun. That part I do
Yes,
know it was not her gun, and they said she usually does, like, if they're outside, she has the gun under a cone, I remember reading. So this was she
right.
did not have her gun inside. And she usually even if it rains, it's under that awning, correct? Or is it always inside if it rains?
Yeah, here's the information that some actual campers told me. They had a set of rules about
Okay.
where they were going to work out.
Mhm.
And 99% of the time, they worked out in the open air out in the parking lot. And you can
Mhm.
see pictures on Facebook
Yep.
of them doing their thing in the parking lot itself, on the asphalt, during the in the area where parking spaces are.
Okay.
It's because it's a big open area.
Mhm.
Um, if it starts to rain a little bit and it's more than a drizzle, then they move to that awning area because it's just a flat concrete area. It's pretty big, but it's
Mhm.
covered. Um, if it's raining harder than that, or it's more severe weather, or the temperature is under 35 degrees, then
Mhm.
they would move inside. And I don't think the temperature gets that cold. And you said you lived in the Dallas area.
Yeah, no, I
When
mean, we're tank tops and stuff by April
Yeah,
typically, so
yeah, it was April 18th, and I believe
yeah.
it was probably in the 60s.
Mhm.
So it definitely was warm then, and I don't think that even year round, I don't think it gets down to freezing that many times. It does a
No.
little bit, but it's not very often. We
No.
have more of that up here in the Panhandle, unfortunately.
Yes.
More of the 100-degree days, I think, than they do down
Yep.
there. But yeah, so in talking with even church sources, they they weren't aware of any particular time that the workout actually was inside the church.
Mm.
Um, they couldn't tell me, because I asked, well, when they worked out inside the church, where did they work out? And they were like, I don't even know, because I wasn't aware that they ever worked out inside the church. I just thought it was always outside. Um, I've since come to find out that when they did work out inside the church, it was just right inside the doors.
Okay.
Um,
Because I saw
that
pictures of her with the Camp Gladiator, and even you could see the wet at certain, not, she wasn't always there, right? She had multiple locations she did it at, but
yeah.
even you could see the ground being wet and they were still outside. Um, because that's kind of Camp Gladiator's thing is they do it outside. So,
Yeah.
did she, because they said she didn't have, like, what was her reasoning for going inside then? Because her stuff was with her, correct?
She had unloaded a few things from the truck and put it at the entrance, like by the door.
Okay.
So there's the CSI report
Hmm.
um, from Ellis County, from the CSI people that they brought in to do that. Their report says that that she had put the tailgate down on her truck. She
Hmm.
had moved some things down by the entrance, and then she left her keys sitting there on the tailgate. And that's what took place. I don't know exactly what the equipment was that
Right.
she put by the door, but usually they have a folding table because they have like sign up sheets and different things that
Okay.
and they'll sign new campers up that haven't been there before.
Right.
So folding table, maybe some weights or some mats, things of of that nature. But whatever it was, she didn't unload much because she got there at 4:16 and she was walking into the church 2 minutes later.
Wow. And they actually said that morning she was a little later than she usually is, right? Like she usually is closer to 4 a.m.
There's a 911 dispatch report where one of the officers spoke to a camper who informed them that she normally got there at 4 a.m. So that is the testimony of one of the campers who probably should know. Um, yeah.
Wow. So in theory, I mean, who would have known? I mean, if it was a burglary, I mean, it was possible. Somebody would have just thought no one was there that time, at that time. Do you
Yeah,
think
if
so?
I were a burglar, I sure wouldn't expect anybody to be at a church at
For
3, 4 o'clock in the morning
yeah.
on a Monday morning, because Sundays are always busy days for
Mm-hmm.
churches. In fact, I don't know what they do these days, um, but I remember being in churches before that, their office schedule would often have the office being closed on Mondays.
I was actually, my aunt and uncle are both pastors, and their office day or their day off is Monday because
Okay.
Sunday they're always at church and Saturday they're getting ready. So yeah, it's like Mondays are everywhere I've been, it's always been Mondays are the typical off day. Wow.
Yeah, and that church is definitely a desirable target because there's nothing on either side of it. There's nothing behind it. There's nothing across the highway from it. At least in 2016, there wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I once read a very interesting article where they did a study where they interviewed burglars who were in prison. So I don't know what good, if they were very good burglars because they had all been caught. but
Yeah.
but anyway, they picked their brain and gave them questionnaires about, um, what kinds of things did you look for when you were picking a target, and what made it a good target, what made it a bad target, things like that. And one of the things they said is they looked for what they called overlooks. An
Mm-hmm.
overlook is an occupied building or a residence or whatever where someone next door or across the road or whatever would be able to potentially see you break in
Okay.
to a building. So Creekside had no overlooks. That made it an attractive target.
Wow. And so that brings us to the Nissan. So I've watched a couple of things that said it really has no relevance, but then some people do believe it has relevance. I mean, it definitely is suspicious that it drove around like that. It did. Kind of, what's your thought on that having a
Well,
relevance to the case?
it's very possible that it's not related,
Hmm.
but it's also very possible that it is. In cases that we follow, we can see circumstances and coincidences happen that really seem like they should be related, and they turn out not to be. Like,
Right.
if you've ever really looked into the Elisa Lam case that was featured
Heard it.
in the Netflix documentary, she was the girl who went missing, and then she was
Oh,
the top of the hotel. She had drowned in the
yes.
water tank. Yeah,
Yes.
there was all kinds of weird things. They called them
Yeah.
synchronicities. Uh,
Yeah.
she was, uh, yeah, she had mental problems. There's the video of her in the elevator looking outside like she's spooked by somebody or talking to somebody,
Hmm.
and so people jump to these conclusions, and rightly so, that she's on the run from somebody, or maybe it's a haunted hotel and a ghost is after her, and it just turns out that things like that are not related.
Hmm.
Um, there were a lot of synchronicities in her case to a movie called Dark Waters, even down to the color of dress that she was wearing and
Okay.
drowning in water and all this stuff. So, I mean,
Wow.
I don't want to go off into the weeds, but just to
Yeah.
say that sometimes things seem to be related to us, and maybe they are, but sometimes
Maybe.
they're not. But
Yeah.
people that don't think that the Nissan is related in the Missy
Hmm.
Bevers case, one of the things that they say is that it was still a pretty big time gap. It was 2
Right.
a.m. and she wasn't murdered until 4:20, so 2 hours and 20 minutes. But
True.
I'll say this, for several years I had it in my head that if it was related, this was a person who broke into the church and then went to SWFA to sit and wait to see if police were responding, if there was an alarm.
Oh.
But I now no longer believe that, because I came to realize that, well, the person's only at SWFA for 6 minutes. That's
Hmm.
not long enough to wait for a police response.
Very
Anybody
true.
that would only wait that long would be pretty dumb, because you know, especially in a rural area where
I
it
was gonna say, yeah.
takes
Yeah.
police a while to get to where they need to go.
Right. Okay.
So, but it's a different story if you think that maybe they were at SWFA considering breaking into SWFA and then
Yep.
chose not to, and then picked the church later. So in that
Yeah.
scenario, they probably still would have tested for an alarm, but they would have broken out windows and such at the church and then gone somewhere else to wait.
Yeah.
SWFA was not a good place to wait anyway. I mean, you couldn't really see much. You'd have to
Right.
cr- crank your neck around, and it's point 0.8 of a mile away. It's almost a mile away. So that
Yeah.
wouldn't have been a good place for them to sit and wait anyway. But another interesting thing is, and we didn't know this until 2019,
Hmm.
police did a geofence warrant. This involves Google, and it
Okay.
involves, for those who don't know, it's a pretty new police investigative technique.
Yeah, I was trying
That
to figure out what that was on your in your links there.
it's pretty fascinating.
Okay.
And the reason it wasn't done in 2016 is because nobody knew how to do it. It's like police find out about a technique, and then they have seminars and things and
Hmm.
communicate with other agencies across the country, and other people find out that they can do this. But basically, Google has a big database of location tracking that comes from people that are using Google phones or Google apps. Um, and if they have location tracking turned on, then all that information is out there, whether you like it or not. um,
Wow.
and there are articles about it. It's called Sensor Vault. If
Okay.
you want to Google the
Yeah, I'm gonna be
words
looking into that.
Sensor Vault, yeah,
Okay.
all this information is in Google. So what you do as a police agency is you send a search warrant to Google, and you tell them, okay, a murder happened and we are interested in these geo coordinates, and they kind of draw a digital fence with these coordinates of four corners of an area, and they say, we want you, Google, to give us not names and not identifiable subscriber info yet, but we
Okay.
want you to just let us know if there are devices that were located in those coordinates between 1 and 3 a.m. or 1 and 4 a.m., whatever, on such and such a date. And what they
Wow.
did was they gave them geo coordinates for the church,
Okay.
and they gave them geo coordinates for SWFA. So
Okay.
that tells you that even 3 years after this murder, the police were still very interested in SWFA because they were including it in search warrants.
Wow.
So what happens after that is Google will then return this anonymous data to
Okay.
them that's said, okay, these are the devices that were here. This device was turned on and using Google Apps, for an hour at 3 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
In the church coordinates. And
Mm-hmm.
if they found that kind of information, that would be very damning, right? I mean, because
Yeah.
there would be no reason, for anybody to be there with a phone at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
Now, whether they actually returned any information from that
Mm-hmm.
search warrant, I don't know.
Okay.
But step two would be then for police, if they did get some data back, would be for them to say, okay, well, you gave us device ID 123456 that was here from 3 to 3:30, or from 3 until 4:30. And there was a murder that occurred at 4:20. And so we believe that this device is a person of interest or belong to a person of interest. So then they'll go back to them with another search warrant and get the actual subscriber information.
That is just crazy.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
is, I had never heard of that before.
But it only works if the person had their phone with them and
Okay.
had it turned on, and they didn't have to have an Android phone, but
Mm-hmm.
they at least would have to have Google apps and Google
Okay.
services. And there's plenty of people that have iPhones and they have Gmail, right?
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah.
That's how you and I communicated today.
Yes.
That's how you sent me the StreamYard link. Was
Yep.
I have an iPhone and I have Gmail, so
Okay.
that right there alone would allow Google to track me and where I am, even though I'm not using a Google phone or an Android phone. But of course, if the suspect was smart enough to turn their phone off or to leave their
Yeah.
phone at home, then it would do no good.
Caddy, I wanted to tell you, Caddy, Texas gal, she went there Saturday for us, and she confirmed what you said. There's a new building being built right now across from the church, but other than that, in the nearest business was the SWFA even now. So yeah, so I mean, like you're saying, there's nothing out there.
Yeah, there's actually a wedding event venue that is across from the church, like directly across the driveway. It's called Firefly Gardens, but they did not begin construction on that until 2017.
Hey, Britt, could you drop Gumshoe Stories link again? I'm gonna post all of this stuff at the end, but in the community post. But so LFT, she has a Decipher podcast. They have a true crime. They're actually
Uh-huh.
digging into the Adam Walsh case currently. Um, and they are research oriented like you. They only do facts. They don't do they do facts. She just wanted to know at this point in your work and research, what stands out as the most interesting, compelling aspect of this case.
To me, what is so compelling about this case is the evidence, visual evidence that's out there that is quite a bit, and yet it has not led to an arrest or even to a person of interest strong enough to even be close to an arrest, really. I mean, when you think about the fact that you've
Yep.
got video of the person that we know did it, and then you've got video of a vehicle that seems like it must probably be connected from SWFA, and yet even with their high-res cameras, the license plate, you can't even figure out one letter of the license plate. It's just it's tantalizing that we have this stuff dangled in front of us, but it's not useful. It's not actionable. It's like this person got either so lucky or else they're so intelligent that they manipulated everything. And there are people that think, that this person is super intelligent and planned everything to a T. I don't personally believe that, but people can believe what they want to believe, and I respect that. But I think that this killer got incredibly lucky. And look at the timing of the next camper arriving after the murder. If she was down at 4:20, The first camper arrived 10 minutes later. And
That's
really,
true.
the killer, when the killer killed Missy, as far as that killer knew, someone else could have been walking in that door right behind her.
Yeah, that's
It would,
true.
because she was late, and the people that normally worked out at 4:30, they were called early bird campers. You'll hear people refer to this case and talk about the 5 a.m. class. That was the official published time, but anybody that wanted to, and there were two campers that regularly did take advantage of this, they would come at 4:30, and that's when their workout started, because that was better for their schedule. Maybe they had to be at
Okay.
work or
Mm-hmm.
whatever later on. And one of those campers didn't want to go that morning because it was raining and
Mm-hmm.
thundering and everything, and so she just turned off her alarm, went back to sleep.
Right.
The other regular camper had a flat tire on the way there. The third camper, the one that did show up at 4:30, it was his first time coming to that.
I remember that, and he wasn't comfortable just going in, and he didn't know if she was there, if she was, yeah.
He thought the door was locked. Here's something else that we have uncovered over the past several years, because a lot of people thought, well, he just waited in his car, and why did he wait? Why did he get there 30 minutes early and wait? Well, number one, he wasn't early. He was right on time. He got there at 4:30. And number two, he didn't wait in his car. That same warrant that I told you about earlier, the geofence warrant from 2019, right, it specifically says that they have a camera angle that shows him and then later on other campers gathering under the awning and checking their phones. So he was there. He was trying to call Missy. Her truck was there. The passenger door was open. So obviously she was there, and it was time for class to start for him at 4:30. And so he's wondering where she is. But the doors, the way that works is Missy unlocks the door with a key.
Okay.
But then there's a little, how on a deadbolt, sometimes you have a little latch that kind of turns from left to right. It's called a thumb turn. Mm-hmm. And that's how you engage or disengage a deadbolt. Normally, a deadbolt would be on the interior of a door, like in a house. But on this church, for whatever reason, they had that deadbolt on the outside of the church. And after Missy unlocked the door, if you just pulled on the door handle, the door wouldn't open, and it would appear to be locked. You had to actually twist that thumb turn and pull on the door at the same time, and then it would open. And he didn't know that, and so he thought the doors were locked. I wouldn't have,
yeah.
And that's why nobody went inside until 5 o'clock.
Wow.
He had to wait until the person who had the flat tire, who would have been there at 4:30, except for the flat tire, she got there and she knew how to get in.
Oh, my
so
goodness.
they all went in together at 5. But that's just another really weird and compelling thing about this case, is the fact that somebody could have arrived right after her. They could have gone inside. They might have been collateral damage too, or they might have prevented the murder from happening. I don't know. But it just all conspired to become, unfortunately, a murder, and an unsolved one, with somebody still walking around.
Dr. Tuttle just said, dumb luck. Dumb luck. And he wants to say, how did police not find the Nissan on some other camera business? I think that's probably because there was no other businesses, but
that area, and I happen to know Dr. Tuttle, or Dr. Tuttle. Dr. Tuttle, we have a big thank you that we need to give him for the layout of the church. That is, it's been used on multiple podcasts and on TV shows, and I've used it.
If you have a channel or a website, please, by all means, let me know, and we'll get that down. That is a phenomenal layout. Thank you for doing that.
Well, just one quick plug for him. He also has a little podcast that he does called Mysterium Madness.
Okay.
And he doesn't do like a case every week or anything, but he's got some interesting cases that he works on that he tells me about from time to time. But yeah,
let's get that all out.
As far as cameras go, that's just a rural area around that church. It's on the side of a highway, and yeah, there's a Whataburger that's a mile down the road. There's some gas stations that are close by. But the thing about those places is they're not trying to catch people that are out on the highway whizzing by at 70 miles an hour. They train their cameras on their location, on their
Okay.
property, either inside or just right outside. And so they're not really set up to identify a vehicle driving by. Now, if
Hmm.
he came in to get a burger at Whataburger, then that would be
That would be
that'd be
different,
better,
right?
because they did have cameras in there, and I actually have spoken to the manager that was there that night, and she didn't say that that there was anything out of the ordinary that night. No suspicious people came in,
Hmm.
but she did say that police spent a big part of the next day at Whataburger getting the video footage and things like that.
Oh,
But
wow.
it just, I don't think it was helpful.
Wow. Criminality, as far I don't believe the man knew how it worked. I think the lock. I don't think the suspect knew how the lock worked. I think that was probably some dumb luck
Well,
in that situation.
yeah, and the suspect himself or herself entered from the opposite end of the church, so they never even had to deal with that door.
Yeah. And so criminality also has a true crime. She came from Unmasked before us, but she has a true crime channel as well. So another good one. But she said she believes it's a man, but I go back and forth. Do you believe one way or the other, or you keep that hidden because you don't want to share your theories, or kind of what do you think?
No, no, I don't keep that hidden at all.
Okay.
Quite honestly, I think it's 50-50. I do not lean
So
one way
hard.
or the other. It is that hard to figure out. This person walks strangely, and is it because they normally do, or is it because of that outfit that they have on? I don't know. Um,
I know.
I
Sometimes I think it's a pregnant woman because of the way she walks, and I waddled like that when I was pregnant. So it's so hard to tell.
but another thing that's interesting,
Uh-huh.
and from the time that I spent on Web Sleuth, there was a user on Web Sleuth that is like a technical illustrator that uses all kinds of really fancy programs,
I saw
and
that, but keep telling it because you gotta explain it. It's awesome.
yeah, it's we call it the Green Man animation. And if you go and watch my video that was done at the 5 year anniversary,
Hmm.
it was a 5 year anniversary Q&A, and I think it mentions the Green Man in the
Hmm.
title. Um, in that video, I show that animation that she did, and it basically takes an animated form of the suspect straight off the video, and then she puts data points on there, and uses a lot of really sophisticated calculations of the thickness of clothing and stuff like that,
Hmm.
and basically digitally removes that to where you've just got a silhouette of the person's actual body, and the person is slender. They're
Hmm.
they're not overweight. Um, Part of what makes them look maybe heavier than they actually are is the camera angle. Those cameras are at like 9 feet tall,
Huh.
um, and they're pointing down.
Okay.
And we know that anytime a camera is pointing down at you from above, it makes you look stockier than you are.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Wow, that you guys have got to go check that video out and watch this. I didn't even know it was possible to do something like that. It removes everything, and you go, that really changed me from going, oh wait, I guess it could be that. Like it is pretty bizarre. Yes, criminality. You've got to go through it again. I think there was more gone back and forth, but yeah, a lot of people have gone back and forth. I know that Brandon, her husband, is pretty certain and feels it's a woman, and I think the height thing, I thought maybe that the angle was, how can you tell that they're 5'2" to 5'7"? But then I had watched the video where it's, they have a pretty good way of figuring out a height of the suspect. Um, Let me see. There was one other question I have. I mean, I can't. Yeah. Oh, there was something that was in my mind. Do we have any other questions here? There was maybe when you guys ask one, then I'll remember what mine was. Are they any closer? So, well, one is, are they any closer, you think? Because I know within the last year, it seems like there's been some things that they're making headway in it, or they feel like it's in a positive. I mean, do you think that they're any closer than they were 6 years ago?
Well, I would say that a couple of years ago, they thought that they were a lot closer.
Oh,
Um, I sort of stumbled upon some information that some public information, but it was information that they didn't expect anybody to find or request, like right when it went down. You know, it was like within like 4 days of them filing some certain documents that I happened to ask just at the right time
okay.
from the from their information department, and so they were kind of scrambling, wanting to know what I was going to do with this information. So I
Mm-hmm.
actually had some conversation with them then, and it concerned a suspect,
Okay.
um, and they were all excited, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But they were also excited about Bobby Wayne Henry, who was the number one suspect, you know,
Yeah,
back in the
that was
day.
my question. I'll go back to him in a second, but keep going.
And so I hate to say it, but I believe that they were on the wrong track again, just as they were with Bobby Henry.
Okay.
And I suspect that they've moved on. I sort of told them that I wouldn't talk about their suspect number two, and let them pursue it because they were so adamant that they felt like they were on the right track. But it's been a few years now, and I didn't
Yeah.
promise to stay silent forever. So I think a day is coming when I'll
Yeah.
probably talk more about it. But at the same time, I don't want people to go dox this person,
Right.
um, because I don't believe this person did it.
Right.
Bobby Wayne Henry was a different deal because, to me, looking into his background, he had done
Mm-hmm.
some bad things. Maybe not necessarily things he got caught for, but there were things in the public record that indicated that he was somebody who's, if he did get lambasted in the media or get doxxed by people, I honestly wouldn't care because I thought he
Right.
de- he
Oh,
deserved
yeah.
he deserved some bad things to happen to him based upon things he did allegedly. So he doesn't sue me, but
Right.
yeah.
Well, that was my okay. She has a question. Interesting suspects, I must say. I know, Dr. Tuttle. My question is, was all the surveillance footage released, or is there footage we won't see?
The footage we're not going to see is the footage of Missy walking into the building, which
Okay.
police told us that they had, but out of respect for the family, they didn't really want to show footage of Missy's last moments, even
I mean,
though
that's
even though the
respectable.
murder itself is not on camera. For it to be like, that within 2 minutes she's going to be dead, that would be tough for them to
Well, I
see.
mean, look at Shanann Watts. They have the last video of her at the door, before she goes in and, she's murdered that evening. That is very traumatic, I think, video for sure.
Well, and look at the
Um,
Uvalde school shooting. The video
oh,
that was just released today, of the police gathering in the hallway and waiting, and then you can hear the gunshots,
yep.
and the parents are all up in arms, as I can understand.
Yep, I
That
won't play the video because I found that. I mean, that's probably I had known somebody who had somebody killed that they were related to their cousin, and I just I got it. You have to draw a line, and the parents they didn't even get a chance to see it before the whole world got to, and then audio's not removed, and that just this
yeah.
craziness. There has to be a line that is drawn for sure. Um, so Bobby Wayne Henry, can you explain to me what actually made it so that he was listed not a suspect anymore, other than an alibi that they said could be questionable at best?
I can't really answer as to
Okay.
why they or how they came
Hmm.
to eliminate him completely. And they
Okay.
did eliminate him completely in their minds, because when I talked to a detective about this second suspect that came along, we
Hmm.
talked very briefly about Bobby Wayne Henry. And what the detective said to me was, yeah, he didn't have anything to do with it. I mean, he said it definitively. And the alibi that was listed in the search warrant was that he was tending to his infant, that they had just adopted,
Okay.
at 3 o'clock in the morning while his wife got ready for work. I don't know why his wife's getting ready for work at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I was thinking that too.
She worked in an office. I don't know. I don't know. And anyway, I mean, your wife is going to be an alibi for you, but is it a trustworthy alibi? It makes me think that they found some other way to confirm. And the best thing I can think, and I could be wrong, we know that they did collect some DNA evidence at the scene. Not
That
many
was my
people know
question.
about
Thank
this
you.
because, it was only in one newspaper article, an interview that Kevin Johnson gave to a local paper, not any of the national media, not even the Dallas media, but like the Waxahachie Daily Light,
Okay.
where he said that they did collect a little bit of DNA evidence. They sent it to a lab that focuses on facial compositing, where they
Okay.
actually create this four-dimensional bust or whatever of a head with hair and skin color and eye color and all that stuff. But he said that the DNA sample was not sufficient quality to be able to do that. And a lot of people read that and they thought, well, the DNA just wasn't sufficient, period. But they didn't say that. They were talking about the facial compositing. So that makes me wonder, do they have enough DNA that they can at least determine gender? If they can determine
Oh,
gender, and if gender is a woman, then they know Bobby didn't do it.
that's huge.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I hope that that's the case. I hope that. But then again, we don't know what type of DNA they collected. Was
Right.
it touch DNA? Was it fluid? Where was it? This was in a church that had 300 people in it the day before.
That's true. That is very true.
How do they know? It's a partial mixed sample, which is not really a problem because, I mean, at least the mixed sample is not a problem because anytime you do a rape kit, that's a mixed sample, and they're able to extract the male's DNA from that, from the female, but it's also partial. And if it's mixed, how do they know that when she was rolling around on the floor, she didn't get some church parishioner's DNA on her? So I don't know.
Very
There's a
true.
lot of questions about that. But I hope that it's usable because in my mind, that's the best chance that we have for this
absolutely.
case to be solved. It'll be solved forensically. It's not going to be solved by confession because the person hasn't said anything to this
6
point.
years.
Apparently, they haven't talked to anybody else because nobody else has come forward. The reward is $150,000 now. So if it's a money motivated person that would give up the suspect, they haven't come forward. So I hope that DNA will one day give us something to where they can send it off to like Paragon Labs or one of these labs that do the genetic genealogy, where they could then at least narrow it down to the family that it belongs to.
Yeah.
That would be huge.
So Criminality said Dr. Tuttle, but she was under the impression there was a video of her walking the hallway and the suspect walking behind her with her not knowing. I have not heard that, but you could probably better answer if that.
No,
Okay.
There's not video that shows that to any great detail. That what we have that police told us about that footage that wasn't released is that they have Missy walking in and then walking straight up a hallway until she's out of camera range and the camera cuts off. And they said that she was walking toward where the suspect was located. Now, does that mean that they could actually see the suspect in that frame? I don't know. That they do say that the murder itself is not on camera.
Okay.
That's another weird thing. When you talk about the compelling things and things that are just not quite to where we can use them. The cameras. All right, a camera has its field of view, which are the borders of what that camera can see and pick up. Okay. But then there's also the motion detection region. These cameras were motion activated, and there was a certain region, and it wasn't as big as the field of view of what the camera could see. It was like a subset of that, like a square within the larger rectangle of the camera. And as long as motion was taking place in that little subset area, then the camera would turn on and would continue recording. But the way it was calibrated, once you went beyond that little subset area, that motion detection region, the camera maybe could still see you, but the recording would cut off. And
That's what you meant by calibrated. Okay.
Yeah. So like, all right, we've all seen the video that shows the killer trying to pry open that door and then giving up and walking across the camera and onto the other hallway where they go to the split door room. Well, that first area, that first camera angle is right above the entrance where Missy walked in. So when Missy walked in, that same camera would pick up her going underneath and then proceeding up in front of that camera. But then when the camera, when her motion gets beyond, there's like a little purplish table, like a table with a purple tablecloth or something, you know that that's the end of the detection region, because that's where, when the suspect is walking toward the camera near the beginning of the video, after they've left the kitchen area and then it switches to this other camera, they just kind of pop up. They kind of pop up like right across from where that table is. And the reason they pop up is that's where that motion detection region saw their activity and started recording. So in, conversely, when Missy is walking away from the camera, that's when it's going to cut off. So literally, she could have walked, 10 feet beyond that little table and done jumping jacks, and the camera would never come back on, would never record, even though the camera angle might have been able to pick her up, But at the same time, if I walked in and I stood close to the camera and I did jumping jacks and she was in that same spot 10 feet beyond, you'd be able to see her, because I would be in that detection region doing my jumping jacks.
Oh my goodness. Criminality said that's what she's in school for right now, is forensic genetic genealogy.
Well, then, as you know, criminality, it's solved a lot of cases, like the Golden Gate Killer, also known as the East Bay Killer. He's a guy who got arrested in his 70s and never told a soul about many rapes and murders that he committed. And he was a former policeman, just like Bobby Henry.
Let me just tell. Okay, sorry, my son is coming to. So. Yep. Okay. So. Elijah. Okay.
Do I have enough time?
Yes. Go. Sorry. The. All right. Sorry about that. One question I have. So we know that no one. I mean, there's the affidavit that says the SUV. No one saw, that we know of, anybody leaving. Like,
that's right.
How do you escape a church without? I mean, it's just crazy.
That 911 dispatch report, the same one where the camper told police that Missy normally got there at 4:00. He was the early camper, the only one who was there between 4:30 and close to 5. And he says in that same report that he did not see anyone at the church. So he saw no vehicles. He saw no one coming or going.
So, I mean, that had to right there tell you it was quickly, like they said, 4:20, around that time. It had to have been, I mean, to get out of there without being seen.
Well, police said in that first press conference that they don't believe that the suspect went in any other rooms after the murder. And common sense would tell you, I mean, whether you believe it was targeted or untargeted, once he has committed that murder, he's not going to stick around, because I mean, where the murder happened was the north end of that corridor. Missy walked in opposite from that. As far as he knew, somebody else could be walking in right behind her. There was no way for him to know. So he would have not wasted any time, and he would have gotten out of there as quickly as possible.
Wow. Well, it's after an hour now. I don't want to keep you too long, but I would love to just continue to pick your brain. I don't want to really take a deep dive into this without, without consulting you, make sure my facts are correct before I do it. But I know that, this is a case we feel pretty passionate about here. At least I do. And it's just, I think it's very complex. And wow.
Well, I really appreciate you covering the case with the videos that you've done and this Q&A. I think as much coverage as we can give this case, the better,
Hmm.
because hopefully at some point somebody knows something that they can put two and two together based on information that they might hear, on one of these podcasts. There, police tended to point people a certain way that I don't think
Hmm.
was right in the beginning. And
It
if you're
clouded
asking
my, yeah, it,
you're asking the public for tips, but then you're painting things a certain way that don't fit what actually happened, then how are you
yep.
going to get the public to help you?
Exactly. And then you've got it was hard because you have to weed through negative. So on in this channel, we do no victim bashing. We don't do, I don't tolerate that at all. I don't know Missy. I didn't, I don't know the circumstance. It's none of my business. But I think that really clouded people's judgment of really looking at the case because everybody got so hyper focused on that part of it, and, the theories and the rumors and all of that stuff when it could be related, it could have nothing to do with the case, it just, um, but I mean, it definitely at first formed my opinion one way. Well, it had to be this, it had to be a scorned lover, it had, like, and it makes you just automatically go to a certain, direction. And it's crazy.
I read a very interesting article just today that was in Psychology Today
Uh-huh.
magazine that it was basically an analysis of the mistake that online sleuths make in trying to
Hmm.
figure out what a case is about. And it brings up something called what you see is all there is. That is a mistake that people make, that they take like say the information that came out about Missy and relationships and stuff in the
Yes.
beginning, like you're talking about, and they think that that's all there is to the case. Um,
Hmm.
they they stop looking at other things that come along, and they stop
Hmm.
challenging their own viewpoint that they may have developed at first.
Yeah.
They end up with a wrong view of the case, and police can do that too. They call it
Sure.
confirmation bias. They call it tunnel vision. Um, it's a danger not only for us amateurs but for professionals as well.
Hmm.
But bottom line, when you talk about relationships, more than half of people in this country, if you believe statistics,
Hmm.
have cheated on their spouse.
Yep.
So you've got four people, right? You've got the spouse who cheated, you've got the spouse they cheated on, you've got the
Hmm.
person they cheated with, and then that person's spouse
Right.
potentially. So three or four people there. When you're talking about over half the country, you're talking about millions of people
Right.
who are involved in cheating in some way or are the victims of cheating. But how many of
Wow.
those people actually commit murder?
That's a
Very,
really great point.
very, very few. It takes an extreme for somebody to kill another person. So just
Yeah.
because cheating happens, that doesn't mean that somebody's going to go kill someone, break into a church, dress up like a cop. You know, and
Hmm. Yeah.
another thing I'll say about the cop gear, and it took me years of thinking a certain way about the gear the person is wearing. Um, before I looked at it another way, and maybe this will help other people who've thought about this.
Yeah.
They look at the fact that this person is in a church wearing SWAT gear, and they think, well, they went to a lot of trouble to dress up in that gear. Why? To
Uh-huh.
go to a church? So it's obviously targeting.
Right.
That's the way that they look at it. Well, what if the person didn't pick the church as a target to begin with? What if it was plan B or plan C? What if they started out their night dressing up knowing that they were going to go possibly commit some break-ins, but they wanted to be dressed to the nines so that they wouldn't be identifiable on camera.
That's
Think about it this way: if I showed you video of a 7-Eleven robbery, and
hmm.
and you saw the guy go up to the counter and hold up the place, um, you wouldn't know what happened to that guy earlier in the night. You wouldn't know if that 7-Eleven was the first place he went into that night. You wouldn't know if he targeted that 7-Eleven all along. You
That's
wouldn't
a good
know
point.
if he was walking down the street and just took a right at the last minute into the door and decided to do it with no forethought. You don't know. You don't know the history.
That's
So
true.
that to me is what we have to look at with this suspect. We can't read his mind. We can't know if that church was where he intended to go at the beginning of that night. And in fact, SWFA, the direction we know he came from, in order to turn into SWFA, he had to pass the church. The church was on the other side of the highway, but he had to pass by it in order to get to SWFA. So
wow.
Is it possible that this suspect wanted to just go up Highway 287 and scope out some places and maybe burglarize a building, or maybe pick one out to burglarize later? And then they decided later on, okay, well, here's this church. There's nothing around it, and it's a church. Nobody's going to be there for hours. Maybe they've got the offerings from the day before.
That's true.
A lot of church break-ins happen on Sunday nights and Mondays for that very reason, because the offerings were collected the day before, and you're taking a chance that maybe, just maybe, the church people, after the service is over, they're too tired to count everything up and put it in the deposit bag and take it to the bank night drop. So maybe they leave it on site. There are churches that do that. My mother-in-law's church, she was like a church secretary, and she said that was what they did for years.
Because they have those boxes. A lot of them have the tithe boxes, and you drop it in there, and if you leave church or whatever, then they'll go back Monday and get it or whatever and count it up. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and a church that doesn't even have an alarm system like this church, you can see how potentially they might decide, we're just going to put the money in this filing cabinet, and then Monday morning we'll take care of it and take it to the bank then. But if this was a burglary, and people say, well, it can't be a burglary because they didn't take anything. Well, that's not good logic.
Right.
Even if it turns out not to be a burglary, that's not the reason. That's not good logic, because if they were money motivated, and money is always the number one thing on a wish list of a burglar, because if they get stuff, they've still got to go pawn that stuff or fence it somehow to turn it into money, right? For it to be useful to them. They're not finding things and stealing them so that they can decorate their house. They're they're wanting to convert them into cash. So if you can get cash to begin with, it's untraceable, and it's less risk. So my belief, and I could be wrong, my belief is that this person broke into the church wanting to find money, and that they were looking for the offices, and that's why they're doing the motions that they're doing. That's why they're going from room to room. That's why they're not spending much time in any of those rooms that we see either, because those are classrooms. They're classrooms. So they open up the door, they see chairs and a table and a whiteboard, and they're like, this is not the office. This is not what I'm looking for. So they go on to the next one. And actually, when they're prying open that door and then they give up prying on that door, I think it's because they looked to the opposite wall, and there's a sign painted on the wall that says offices, and it has an arrow pointing down that same hallway where the split door room is. And I think that
I didn't know that.
You see them messing with their vest. You see they're putting like one of the tools up, and they kind of turn. And this is where they have like a feminine stance. This is where if I want to think that this might be a woman, that's the one point where it looks like it might be a woman to me, because their hip is kind of cocked.
Right.
And it's a feminine move that you see a lot. Anyway, when they're in that motion and they're not looking at the door anymore, and they look kind of in the direction of the camera, I don't think they're actually looking up at the camera. They're looking down at eye level at that sign on the wall that says offices. And right after they do that, they start walking that way. They walk onto that other hallway, and they go to the split door room. After the split door room is another room. After that room is the offices.
That is big. That is, wow. I can't wait to go back and watch all your footage again now, because I feel like this clarifies so much for me, because all we see when you first see that, Emily says, I know what I'm watching after this Gumshoe story.
Thank you, Emily.
Yes, Emily, please do that and go to his website as well. Criminelli just wanted one more question. She said, why couldn't the clothing be identified to a department or place of purchase?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Good question, Criminality. Okay, there's what we think is a tactical vest that has pockets on it and has police on the back. That's not that uncommon. you can buy things like that off Amazon.
Okay.
They didn't necessarily buy it locally. The person has a helmet on that might be a paintball helmet or it might be a motorcycle helmet. It seems too glossy to be an actual police SWAT type helmet, because those are usually like a matte black so that they don't reflect light. But this one seems to be reflecting a lot of light. So I think it's
true.
Maybe a paintball helmet or something like that. Again, you can't really trace that. And, we have privacy laws in this country, and police just can't go to Amazon or online retailers and say, give me a list of every person who's ever bought a tactical outfit. They have to have probable cause before they can do that. So they've got to identify a good suspect and have a good reason for a search warrant that they can then send to Amazon or some other entity and say, okay, we believe this person may have purchased a tactical vest from you. So let us know what records you have for this person for purchases of this type. So that's what we have to deal with. Police have to get to a point before they can even get search warrants like that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't even think about that. I know we did have, so next time we cover this will probably be tomorrow, because not everybody's, no, within the next few days, as far as there's one of the girls, like a Women for Us, Caddy Gale, Texas, she went there and was able to speak with locals. And, it's just kind of cool to get some of their perspective as well. Obviously, they're not always fact-based. They have their own theories, but so that's going to be pretty cool. Oh, I have to ask one more before you leave. There were warrants for local stores for ammunition. Was there any info released regarding the findings?
I have asked for and obtained every search warrant that is supposed to be available in this case, and I've never seen any warrant. But I think I know what you're talking about, criminality. Okay. In that CSI report, there was a reference to Walmarts, to 3 Walmarts in the area, like Ovilla, Waxahachie, Red Oak. I think those were the 3, for ammunition or suspicious gun sales that morning. That's an interesting thing that I've never been able to really figure out. So yeah, you're right. That was a search warrant, and it did make reference to ammunition and guns. And it even talked about the director of security of Walmart, and it named her, and it said that they were in touch with her and wanted her to pull up any suspicious records. But then there were parts of that were redacted in that CSI report. And so it didn't really tell us what they found from that. But it's 6 years later, so I guess that tells you they didn't find much. But I'm really curious as to why they were looking at Walmarts to begin with.
That is true. I mean, yeah.
Why it was 3 specific Walmarts. There's a Walmart in Midlothian too, and it was not mentioned.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, go to every other block, there's a Target's, and I mean, there's stores everywhere, right? But yeah, that's well, I guess Target doesn't sell guns, but that is that's very. But well, I don't know. We would love to at some point have you back on. Do you look at other cases?
I try to limit that because I just, one rabbit hole is a big rabbit hole.
Yeah.
The thousands of hours I've spent on the Missy case, as you've got kids and a life, and you can't just be consumed by it. And there's been times I have been consumed by it, and so I'm trying to be a better person and not be so consumed by it. There was a case, and you might be interested in this or might already know about it. Kelsey Barrett. It was out of Colorado. She had a fiance named Patrick Frazee. It turned out that he killed her in her home and then called an ex-girlfriend to come clean it up and clean up the crime scene. And then he burned her remains on his property. And that was a big case that I followed for a while.
I'm going to have to look at that.
Yeah. Kelsey Barrett, Berreth.
Okay.
Another interesting case is the Elizabeth Barraza case that's out of Tomball, Texas, outside Houston. That was the garage sale murder that happened in the driveway. It was caught on surveillance camera from a doorbell cam across the street. It has some I mean, I'm not. It's not connected to Missy Bevers,
Right.
but there are similarities in the sense that it's on video, although actually the murder itself is on video. But you see a vehicle, but you can't really identify a license plate or
Right.
identify the person. So that's another maddening case that's been unsolved for like 3 years now.
And now Tomball, that's where the 3 boys and the grandfather were from, right? That just recently were killed by the escaped convict. Yeah, you'll have to look at that. It's a tragic case. The escaped convict in Texas killed the grandfather and 3 of the boys.
I know the case you're talking about. I didn't know that it happened in Tomball, but
that's where they were from. Yeah,
that has changed how prisons are handling their inmates now when they have to take them to hospitals and things like that to be seen. That everything has changed about their procedures because of that incident.
That was so terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, we would love to have you back on sometime with Missy when we keep diving in. Like I said, if you guys, I will post on my community page and in the description of this all of his links to his channel. I highly recommend while you're thinking about it in the next couple of days, go watch all of his videos, as well as like he said, he helped Tom Webster a lot with his 4-hour-long deep dive into this case. And I mean, that's where I've gotten a ton of my stuff. And also, yes, criminality, yes, please come back. And Dr. Tuttle will put his stuff up as well, who did the church layout and has a podcast. I mean, this is why we're here, right, for facts. And this is why I knew we had to have your expertise on us before we got any further, because I did find myself going straight to that narrative of scorned lover. So it was good to look at the other angles of it.
Well, I thank you for covering the case, and I thank your audience for being here. And keep Missy's family in your thoughts and prayers. Her daughters were seriously affected by this, as you would expect, and they're without a mom. And they need closure. They deserve closure, and Missy deserves justice. And just as you're looking at the case, I would just ask, keep an open mind. As you're looking at the evidence, look at all the evidence, try to understand as much of it as you can, and look beyond the surface to try to figure out, and who knows, you may be the one that cracks it. And if you have information, definitely call Midlothian Police or call that Crime Stoppers number that's you can find online for Ellis County Crime Stoppers. And
you have questions that I can't answer, which probably is the case. Tim's email is right on his website and on his and like I said, when I emailed him, he emailed me back shortly after, so he's always willing to answer questions. So we appreciate you, and you're probably gonna have a lot of new subs after this. So
that's all right. Well, I hope you do too. I went and did some cross promotion today on my channel to let people know this was happening. So
this is amazing info. So, all right. Well, everybody, you take care, and thanks again for coming by.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Yep.